If you are in a family court and the judge says, I'm going to appoint a law guardian, attempt, if possible, to stop right there. Today we will find out how to do that. Also, doesn't it make sense that your child is not likely to understand or appreciate what a right is, especially if that child is under 15 or 16 years old? It doesn't take a rocket scientist to know that you will be paying for this person who lacks efficacy and expertise in and about your family. How can any lawyer who falls from the sky become suddenly able to determine what a right is for a child, and how a decision that he makes may affect the outcome of having the child's mother or father available to him or her no more? It's a shot in the dark delivered by an unknown assailant, law guardian, and I have with me Gary Jacobs, who's the president of Americans for Legal Reform, and you know a lot about this stuff, don't you?
More than I wish to know. And let me start off by saying I don't want to brag, but I'm not an attorney. So I'm saying this from
Stop bragging.
I'm saying this from a layperson, but I did a lot of research on law guardians. But I think the first thing we need to correct is we're calling them law guardians because you and I, when we went through our divorce, they were called law guardians or guardian ad litem. The correct terminology now for what we're talking about in this show is attorney for the child. Okay. And there is a distinction because a guardian ad litem or a law guardian is somebody who protects the rights of the child. It's been changed years ago to say attorney for the child. That person is not there to look out for the best interests of the child. And most judges...
And as I said in the opening, they can't do it anyway.
They couldn't do it anyway, which
right.
So they think, well, I think that's what happened. Everyone kept saying, the lawyers would say, well, how does this lawyer know what's in the best interests of my child? Right. You already appointed a forensic, you know, I'm the parent. First of all, the parents should know. But, you know, an attorney doesn't know. So they stopped that and said, we're going to have this person who's an advocate for the child. It's an attorney for the child. Now, you can get a law guardian appointed to look out for the child's best interest. But for what we're discussing, and a lot of attorneys do, most judges still say law guardian, as we do.
Right.
But just for the people listening, there is a difference. And because the attorney for the child really explains what they are a lot, what their role is a lot better.
Sure, it's a lot closer to reality.
Because what they are is the role of the attorney for the child is just like I hire an attorney, your wife hires an attorney. Their client is the child. So their job is to do what their clients, their children, want them to do. Very, very clear. It's not to look out for the best interest. In fact, there's a clause in there in the rules and the ethical rules for the law guardian that says if your client is asking you to advocate for something that you don't believe is in their best interest, or I believe it says that you think will put them in harm, you still have an obligation to fight for it, but you do have an obligation to tell the court that you believe what they're doing is going to put them in harm. For example...
That was a little confusing because I didn't know who you meant by they. Is it you're talking about the parents who were responsible?
Right. So well, let me give you an example. So the child is 8 years old, and the law guardian or the attorney for the child speaks to their client and says, what do you want to do? Who do you want to live with? And they say, I love my both parents. I want to go back and forth 50-50. But they find out that the father is a child abuser. You know, he's admitted to child abuse, he's been convicted of child abuse, but it's often in child abuse cases the child does want to be with the abuser. They're trying to get that person's love. So they're saying, I still want to be with my father, even though he's a sexual abuser. I don't care. I love my father. The law guardian, attorney for the child, is still supposed to go to court and zealously fight for what their client wants, which would be to see their father. But by being alone with their father, they're putting them at risk. So what the attorney for the child should do is say, Your Honor, being that Mr. X is a sex abuser or a physical abuser, I don't believe it's in her best interest. And I think if this girl was alone, she would be in harm's way. But this is what she wants, and therefore I'm going to advocate for her. This whole thing is a bunch of shit, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
There is no reason for a freaking law guardian. Why do you need someone to tell? First of all, let's start off with this. When you get divorced, everybody does the same thing. And I know you do this as a mediator. Leave the kids out of this. Don't let children make adult decisions. Adults can't make these decisions. They're so difficult. Don't involve the kids. And in fact, many times if you go to court, one parent will say, you know, they're alone with the child and they're lonely, and they'll treat the child like a friend. And they'll confide in them with all these horrible things that are going on.
Sure. That's
and
the alienation starts.
Right, starts there. And they'll go to court and the judge will say, how dare you talk to your child about what's going on here? Well, when you hire an attorney for the child, I say hire, you don't hire them because nobody wants them. They get appointed by the court. The first thing this attorney for the child does is says, so Johnny, where would you like to live?
Where would you rather live?
Who do you want to stay with? Your mother? You're asking them to make these adult.
So they say, well, let's say I'm going to stay with Dad. Sold. That's
right. Well, and I say, if that's the case, let's just throw out the whole freaking court system and let's ask the 6-year-old child, who do you want to live with? How much money should daddy give mommy? I've had a law guardian's attorney for the child go to the courts and say, well, my client needs more money. And I say, well, wait a minute. Stop them right there and say, precisely how much did Johnny say that they want the daddy to pay? It's bullshit. They don't ask for that. They go way, and you have to keep, which we'll talk about in a little while, you have to keep the law guardian into their role.
One of the things that always concerns me, as a mediator, I can avoid it, by the way, and that is that you can ask the parents how they want to handle the children up front. It's a way to avoid it. Get it up front. Right. And then we're not talking about the loss in value and need to psychoanalyze or get a forensic or anything like that. It just blows it right off. I very rarely have ever used the forensic, I think once in the 15 years. Right. So you really don't need, they're perfectly capable, as you suggest, to handle what important information the child really does need.
I mean, I go into it when I tell everybody, and as the president of Americans for Legal Reform, people come to me and say, I want to fight in court. I don't support anybody who's not trying to do shared custody.
Right.
Not the mother, not the father. You don't try to take away the kids. I don't want the courts determining who's an asshole, is what I tell people. Yeah, right. Because, listen, a lot of judges didn't like me because I spoke out against the system. Therefore, they would say, hey, this guy Gary, he's a jackass. He shouldn't be the parent. Your
significant other was already calling you an asshole. You don't need a judge to authorize it.
But I don't want the courts determining who's not a nice guy or not.
Right.
The safety of the child, that's a totally different thing. But as far as who's a better, I mean, often these forensics come back and they say, well, both parents love the kids, they're nurturing, blah, blah, blah. This person, the mother, because none of us are perfect, the mother has these issues, the dad has this issues. None of them would put the child in danger.
And risk.
Then share the freaking custody.
Sure, that's right.
Why take it away?
It's pretty simple.
Share it and let the kids figure it out.
What I get a lot of calls about parents who come in and they talk about how stunned they are about the process, and they're suddenly at a place where now the investigation has begun. So you're there to try to decide how you want to go forward, whether you want your kids involved in certain special schools and whether you're a qualified person to lead in certain areas. You know, that gets done in mediation, but we're in court. When you're in court, they're stunned. They can't talk to their significant other. They see an authoritative position
overhead. Set up that way on
purpose. Right, so you have to just basically feed the system.
Right.
And that's what concerns
me.
People are calling me and going, how do I get out of this?
The attorneys want to keep you separate.
How do you get out of it?
Have you ever heard an attorney in a divorce case say, we need to sit down?
Yeah, let's have a sit down.
No, they go, let's do a four-way, which is me talking to your attorney and trying to be a bigger asshole than he's being an asshole, and they one-up each other so that the woman comes out and goes, my guy really stuck it to my ex. And the ex goes, he gave it to that bitch finally. Yeah. That's what they want. Yeah. They never say, hey, the two of you, let's try to figure out what's in the best interest. They never do that.
What do you think the criteria would be in selecting an attorney for the child?
Well, unfortunately, you don't.
First of all, it's a little wacky. I know I'm saying the obvious, but I wanted to hear from
you.
I
mean, first, you don't get to select them. The judge appoints them. In family court.
Well, to have them be qualified as an attorney for the child.
I don't think there is. I mean, they have to go to some classes.
What does it look like?
Okay, here's what they are. They're ambulance chasers.
Yeah.
These are lawyers who suck and can't make a living screwing people out of $400 an hour, so they go to the court and they ambulance chase. They run around. There's certain ones. This woman, Kathy Small. This woman's just a pussy, piece of shit, horrible, incompetent lawyer. Can't make a living because she sucks. She's scared of the judge. She does whatever they want. So she runs around the hallway kissing the judge's ass, hoping that she's standing there in the courtroom when they need to appoint an attorney for the child.
So she can make a couple of bucks.
In family court, they pay them $75 an hour. The interesting thing is, when you're in Supreme Court, then the parents pay. Usually the moneyed spouse, usually the father. That same piece of shit law guardian who's getting $75 in family court, when the state pays, when the person pays privately, all of a sudden they're $150 an hour. So right there's a scam. It's inequitable that the state pays one price, you pay another price.
So why would that be? Because the issues of family court?
Yeah, because the state's paying one and they don't care. The whole idea is extracting money.
But there must be some elevating reason for that.
I don't believe there's been lawsuits filed against. I don't believe that there's been any conclusion. So these are bad lawyers going right out of the box. They're bad. I mean, let me tell you a little story about this Kathy Small, who I'm talking about. She's a law guardian,
Yeah.
and I don't know if you can tell, but I don't like her. So just
No.
Okay. So I think I caught this woman making ex parte communications. Very clear the rules. Just like your lawyer couldn't have an ex parte communication with the judge. Either can the attorney for the child. It's the same rules, yet they do it all the time. Everybody who's been in the system knows that these have conversations with the clerks, with the law. I caught
And it goes on all the time.
All the time. I caught them. I had court watchers, which we talk about with ALR, Americans for Legal Reform. You should have court watchers. I walked out of the court. They didn't know my court watcher stayed behind. All of a sudden, they come running out. Hey, Judge McNulty got off the bench and is having a conversation with Kathy Small, your law guardian. What the hell? I burst back into court. What's going on here? All of a sudden, they get back up on the bench. I'm back on the record. Mrs. Small, isn't it true that we just had an ex parte communication, but all we discussed was the date of the next court appearance, which wasn't, because I had people there listening. Oh, yes, Judge, that's all we discussed. What's she going to say? No, Judge, you're a liar.
Yeah.
I mean, there's rules that the law guardians have to follow. And what I tell people who are watching the show, don't let the law guardian overstep their bounds. The law guardians cannot testify in a case. The judges tend to give them more responsibility or roles than it's clearly outlined what they can do. I've heard so many times the law guardian say, what do you think about this agreement, law guardian? Do you think it's good? That's not their position to say. They're an attorney
They're
just
not
like
taking
you.
a side. They're not.
Right, they're
supposed to be
just
taking
like
a
you.
side.
There's 3 lawyers, and they all have the same thing. I just read a decision the other day where the woman took the guy to court for sexual abuse and all this other nonsense. They found it all to be untrue. And at the end, it says, well, we're not giving the order of protection, we're not doing this, but the law guardian expressed concerns that she would like the father to have supervised visits and to undergo therapy with a psychiatrist duly licensed in New York State. Who the hell is the law guardian to determine that this man should do that? That's testifying. They can't testify.
Our audience should know that very often, based on how you fill out your interrogatory, is the opportunity for law guardians and people and parenting
I don't know,
in the
Chris.
box
I find that
they
throw them on every case because what they do is they make the judge's decision easier.
People that don't have money, I mean,
They're family court. They don't care. They appoint them.
No, and in the Supreme Court,
They
people that
don't
get chased
care.
away.
They don't care. They appoint them and they say, you run out of money, you'll give up and don't have to make a decision.
That's crazy.
They appoint them all the time. I'm telling you, Chris, I'm there many times.
I've seen it just recently. I know what you're talking about, right?
Even if the kids aren't even involved, people go in for money. Law guardian on the case. And it makes the judges because what they do is this is how they railroad you.
It also defers them for making the decision.
They railroad them in.
The law guardian said such.
They go in the meeting, or the law guardian goes, look, this is what the judge is going to do. The judge is going to take away custody. The judge is going to make you pay. So you should just agree to this.
So is it possible to stop the law guardian from entering? Okay, so
not to stop them from entering into the case. To put it, you got to keep them in their place.
Okay,
there's
so
the rules.
You can manage them. In other
Google
words.
New York State role of the attorney for the child, and there's a 77-page document that lists out all their roles. And one of the things is they have to inform the client the ramifications of what they're saying. So they can't just sit down with the kid and say, hey, who do you want to have custody? They have to say, just so you know, if you say dad, then if you say mom gets custody, your father may only see you every other weekend and every Wednesday. Do you understand that? Yes. Another thing that's very interesting that it gets violated all the time, there's still attorney-client privilege, believe it or not. So when these attorneys go out, attorneys for the child, and go into court and say, well, Sarah said she wants mom to get custody. You just violated the attorney-client privilege. You cannot do it without express permission from the client, which, of course, is all nonsense because we're talking about children. We're talking about I have a
they're
case
still
where
making the younger child make that decision.
They are, but then they're violating the rules of the law guardians. You have to stop them, which most lawyers don't want to do. They don't want to put the law guardians in their place. It's going to upset them.
Because he's a friend of the judge often.
Right. I say you got to stop them right there. If you don't want to do it in the court, I have one in Nassau. I said when the guy walks out, you need to get him in the court and say, I let you get away with it today. You will not overstep your bounds again in the court. You won't testify. You won't go through violate your attorney-client privilege. You will follow the rules. They also have to disclose conflicts of interest, which they don't do. I mean, I had this woman, Kathleen Small. She donated money to the judge, never disclosed. I specifically asked her if she donated money to Judge McNulty or her thing she was raising money for, and she didn't answer me. And just if you give me 1 second, because I know you got a shitload of questions there.
It's okay.
If anybody watching the show had Kathy Small as a law guardian, I'm working on something big. I already have a huge list of people who had her as a law guardian. She violated their rights. Find me on Facebook, Gary Jacobs. Go to Long Island Backstory at gmail.com. You can find me anywhere on YouTube. Send me a message with your information because we're getting this group together and we're going after this woman, Kathy Small.
And the child's, what do you call him? Attorney for the child. Attorney for the child has a unique representation in court, but can you speak to them outside of court?
I'm
meaning
the mother, the father?
The mother, the father, right.
You can't, yes, you can't speak to them. So, but if you have an attorney, interestingly enough,
oh, yeah,
they're not allowed to speak to you without the permission of your attorney. This is all set up, the system is set up to keep everybody in the money and to keep real, they don't want you talking.
And everybody should know, by the way, that this isn't just a game we're playing here in conversation. These things actually do happen.
This is serious.
This is very serious business. You can lose a lot, and especially the contact with your kids. Let's talk a little bit about how it connects to poor parenting and the alienation. What can actually happen when you set somebody up in a forensic, remove custody from somebody who may have been better?
Right.
Because the attorney for the child has that opportunity to move the judge to make a decision in that regard, which could be the wrong one.
Right.
Because they're not qualified necessarily.
It's set up. A lot of times they'll file a motion to give temporary custody to one parent.
Right.
Once you go down that road,
you're done.
You can go to forensic, but what happens? The courts don't like change, right? That's why we always tell people don't move out of the house. If you really are fighting for custody, don't move out, because if you're out and then you get to trial 3 years down the road, they go to court and they go, look, Your Honor, the kids have been 3 years living with the mother, or the father, and they're doing fine, they're adjusted. Do we want to shake up this whole thing again? It's working, the kids are doing well in school, which there is really not a correlation between alienation and kids doing well in school. Yeah. It's an emotional problem. It's not an intellectual problem. The kids don't become stupid because they're alienated.
And if suddenly your significant other who you're about to divorce claims that there's been an abuse in some fashion, you're going to be out of the house, and that's how the custody is lost.
That's the silver bullet.
That's when you're done.
Once you're out, you're done. It's game over. I tell people, you're out of the house, it's game. Now, there are some forensics who will try to get around that, some forensic evaluators, but how do you evaluate somebody when you're not living with the kids?
Yeah.
How do you do it? You can't do it. If you're in the house, you can do it. If you're out living in a basement in your brother's apartment, in your brother's house or your mother's house, it's very hard. What, the kid's going to come there and sit? It's very hard to do it.
The litigants should be aware of that changes of information. This is like a psychoanalysis test in a way, but you should be aware of change of behavior by your ex. Yeah. If you were always able to communicate with them and suddenly something changes in their behavior, you can suspect that
like the Trojan horse.
The other shoe is going to drop at some point.
Or they're being nice. we tell people something. They go, "Oh, this is great."
It does happen the other way.
This is great. My wife is being so nice to me now. I go, "That's the Trojan horse."
Trojan horse.
Don't get too complacent, because they're probably planning something.
Yeah.
Listen, people don't change. Leopards don't change their spots.
And people should know it happens both ways. It's not
I'm saying because I'm a father.
You're going to tend to sound like that.
You and I have both heard that it happens. It does tend to happen more that the father gets alienated, because it's just the
sheer
culture.
The sheer numbers.
Is that whoever's got. Listen, if the mother's got the kids, they can alienate better than the father. It's hard to alienate one Wednesday for dinner and every other weekend.
If you're outside working and the wife is home, it's easier for that to happen.
Whoever's got
the
more
appearance is easier.
Whoever's got more time can do it.
So when you're, I would like to hear a couple of examples that you've come across so that the people can get a little bit of a feeling. We tend to talk legal because we're familiar with the system. What other examples have you come across that could really show the advantages of handling things the way you're talking about, or the disadvantage of allowing a attorney for the child operate?
Right. Well, I've seen plenty of cases where what they do is, if you sort of give them the leeway, and the judges will often actually ask for that leeway, but if you put them in their place, they know they're being set up for an appeal, because they know the rules. And like I said, you may not want to do it in court the first time. You may want, what I suggest personally, is you send the attorney, you read the 77-page document. A lot of it's just legal stuff, but the first 10 pages or so is the real gravamon of the whole issue. And you find all the things that they violated, which one is they're supposed to sit you down and tell you as the parents what their roles are. Explain it to you, because people don't know. If they don't do that, they violated the rule of the law guardian. These are attorney rules. So
you can use that more or less to help.
It. You put them on notice that, hey, if you screw me,
you have the document.
If you screw me, I got documented that you broke the rules, and if this affects my decision, I'm coming after you. So set it up in writing, Dear Mrs. Small, you were supposed to do this. You were supposed to tell me about this. You never sat me down in this. You know that my kids are being alienated from me because you spoke to the forensic and I sent you a copy of the report.
So you know that
you know this already,
right.
Yet you're still saying my kids want this, which you're supposed, but I never heard you tell the judge that those kids, you got information that they were alienated, and it's not in their best interest to be with the mother.
See, I find some of these people that we talk to about these subjects that are like this very difficult to apprehend the information, to come into them and use it when they're under the gun.
They are, but that's what they're watching this show. I'm giving you where to go.
Right.
If you take this, if you Google this New York State rule of the attorney for the child, it's very clear what the rules are. And then document it, read it. People are gonna watch this show today and go, oh my God, I saw this show and I read it. My attorney for the child broke every one of these rules. So turn it around, send them a letter. Don't go public with it yet. Send them a letter and put them on notice. This is what you did. And if it affects my case, we're gonna have a problem. Now you have to be careful, you don't want to threaten them, but it's a conditional threat. If this affects my case, we're going to have a problem. Please try to rectify the situation. Let them, listen, you just want the attorney for the child to be fair. I say go away, but you have no choice. So you want them to be fair. Now listen, if they
You said you had no choice. Before you said that sometimes you can't stop them from coming in, right?
You can't stop them from coming in.
But can you manage other ways to manage?
Right, you have to
other
try to
than the
manage.
77-page document.
You can't stop them from coming in. I've had people say
you can't have a letter to you can't write to him.
No, I've asked them to. I've asked people have been in court and said, I don't consent to you appointing an attorney for the child. I don't care.
What's it for?
I don't care. But I've asked them, money issues. Why are you appointing a
When you got him on the phone,
child?
ask him personal questions about your kid that he really needs to know. They see how they come up with the answers.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
I mean, listen, they appoint them for, Chris, they appoint them for a 2-year-old child. They'll appoint an attorney for the child. What the hell? And then when you go to court, it's like a joke. I've heard a judge in Nassau just read, have you spoken to your client lately, Mr. Marks? She's 3 freaking years old. What do you spoken? What do you want me to give her a lollipop? And a big scam of the law guardians, because maybe the FBI is watching this, I hope they are, or the Attorney General. How about the law guardians who charge $75 an hour and a double and triple billing because they got 4 cases going on and they got a private case going on? How about we put all those bills together and see if they're charging for more than a 40-hour week?
Do we have a chance to do that?
Well, there's rules on how much money each law guardian can get.
Not available.
I don't believe that they're ever followed. And let me tell you, I bet you, I tell people, the other thing you do is when you get your law guardian, you go to the Board of Elections, you find out the last time the judge ran, and I learned this from Carl Lancezero, who's the founder of Americans for Legal Reform. He said, well, look on the Board of Elections. I didn't even know you can do this. Yeah. You go to the Board of Elections website. Of course, it's buried. I had to call them and ask them where it is. Judge McNulty, can you tell me who donated to her campaign? What a shock. My law guardian's on the top of the list.
Now
no shock there.
That's important. I hope everybody hears that.
Right.
Go
but
after
I think it's not illegal, by the way. It's not illegal to do. But if it's over, I think it's over $500, it has to be disclosed. But either way, still ask them. Law guardian, I just want to know from my information, did you donate to my judge's campaign? Now they get scared because they think, oh, he's going to say it's illegal. It's not illegal. People donate. That's how judges raise money. All the lawyers donate.
Of course.
But you can't give $5,000, and I think you can, but it has to be disclosed. It would make a big difference.
Why can't you make a simple rule there and just have anyone who donated not available in that courtroom?
Because then they wouldn't get any money.
I mean, you get another.
Why do you
somebody
think they donate?
Who hasn't donated?
Why would somebody? Why does somebody donate
I
to
know
a
it's
judge
obvious,
to get something back for it?
Of course, but that's not. It's not right.
Of course, it's not right. It's ridiculous.
Not when it comes to your family and your kids. Do you want this to happen?
Right.
But
if you want to be a law guardian, they all know they got to donate money to the campaigns.
All right, we got about 4 minutes left. Do me a favor. What connection can we make, or what would be the residual effects of children who suffer from when you're separated like that and you had somebody else make that decision, you have that thought that, geez, somebody else made that decision. These kids have to live like that.
Let me tell you, imagine.
Live separately.
It's child abuse, honestly.
Yeah.
This is meant, imagine being a child and the law guardian comes in, you have no idea why they're there. You're 8 years old and they say, who do you want to live with, your mommy or your daddy? And they say, you know what, I love baseball, so, the kids don't think, I love baseball, so I want to be with my dad. And the law guardian goes in and fights for that dad to get custody. And now the poor mother loses custody.
Right.
And then when they get older, they realize, wait a minute, this was because of me. I caused my mother all this pain that she doesn't get to see me. What a burden is that?
Yeah, that's a tremendous
burden. What kind of freaking burden? Can you imagine that burden?
What's honest,
horrible.
What's scary about what you just said is that exactly happened to me. my kid was not able to spend the time he needed. As I was a baseball player in college. I was a good ball player. I could have taught him things, and that never had the chance to happen because I was alienated from him in a Florida divorce, out of state. I couldn't get to him. I couldn't do it.
That's why share
kept
custody.
me away.
Let me tell you, if you love your kids, and I've said it over and over again.
Absolutely.
Share custody is close. Listen, you can't do 50-50, but share custody. They go back and forth.
Sure.
Certain time you have to be flexible. But if you take the monetary incentive out, it goes very smoothly, Chris.
The extended circumstances are just unbelievable, and it's a shame that there's no relationship to any of these things occurring traced back to a decision made by a law guardian or a judge. I'm sorry, attorney for the child or judge. So you have this ongoing awkward feeling of going forward, not knowing, geez, it really wasn't me who made. I didn't really screw that up.
Let me tell you what happens.
You get your own set of guilt going on.
You talk about the problems that happens once the kids do this. They don't know what's going to happen. So then they go to court and they say, "Well, I want to live with Dad." Then they get home. Mom goes, "How did you say that to me? You hurt me." The kids will never be honest with anybody ever again.
Teach them an awful lot of bad tricks. That's right.
They taught them that never be honest because whatever I say is going to come up in court and be used. They sort of hint that it's confidential, but they use it. Then when they get to the judge 3 years later for an in-camera interview, they know they're not going to be truthful with the judge because they know whatever they tell them, the judge is going to go out and blurt it out to everybody else.
The courts are a place to mess things up, aren't they? I mean, the dysfunction in the kids that I've seen come out of courtroom is really
look at the children we're raising, the crime rate, the amount of people in jail.
Fatherless children, especially if you want to see what it's like. Look at Chicago.
It's just
Chicago's all the killings that they have with all these boys.
I think the number is something like 80% of these kids were raised in fatherless homes. And here we're in court, and what do they try to do? Remove one parent from the home.
Yeah, right.
How ridiculous. They should be saying, you know what? The incentive is, if you want to pay less child support, you'll spend more time with your kid. Then you'll pay less child support. We should be encouraging, punishing people who don't see that. You want to get paid the maximum amount?
The system set up to punish, absolutely,
right. You don't want to pay the maximum amount, you'll see your kid. If you blow off your kid and don't want to see him, then you're going to pay for the other person to be the parent.
Absolutely. There's like no fairness for the family going forward. And we've seen families break up further away because we're just done with the last minute. Do you have a minute to go to explain anything further about the continuance of the attorney for the child or for parental alienation or for ALR?
Yeah, well, as I said, ALR's, obviously Americans for Legal Reform or ALR, that's where I learned a lot of this stuff. But educate yourself. Don't just think that first of all, the law guardian is not your friend. I'm calling law guardians. The attorney for the child is not your friend. They are not. They're the judge's friend. They're your attorney's friend. They are not your friend. They don't give a shit about your kid. When they say, oh, they're looking out for the best interest, people still think that. They don't care about, the judge doesn't care about the best interest, the law guardian doesn't care, and your attorney doesn't care. They care about their pocketbooks.
The check is coming, and that's about all they really care for. They do not care about,
this is a number game for them. They become numb.
Yeah.
They destroy families all day long. And, to some extent, they have to sleep at night.
Yeah.
If you don't, how would you sleep knowing that you destroyed, it's like doctors who take care of cancer patients. They have to somewhat learn to remove themselves because people are dying all the time.
If they didn't, they'd be extremely guilty.
Right,
they'd be drinking and taking drugs, which of course we know many do.
Or they're going into it and they're narcissists or sociopaths who are automatically mentally removed, and that's how they can deal with it.
Narcissists make it easy, don't they?
Make it very, very easy for them. They sleep very well at night.
Gary Jacobs, President for Americans for Legal Reform, thank you very much. Societal and political trends are rapidly breaking down the family that once was the cornerstone of our great American culture. And at FIT, we know you cannot get this information on your own, so we'll bring it to your TV every single week. And of course, we always invite all opposing views. My name is Chris DiMaggio. Thank you for watching FIT TV. We'll see you again next week.